Welcome, travelers, to another episode of the Time Travel Trio podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Hyde.
And we're
The
Time Travel Trio!
What's up? Welcome to another episode.
A highly anticipated episode.
Our second TV show episode.
Yeah,
Very exciting.
in the land of the square box. Or now the flat rectangle.
Or a metal plane.
Yes, we're finally getting to do something I know you have been waiting to do for a very long time, Jen.
Yes, I have, but it is not my episode.
Yes. Today, I'm happy to announce that we are doing Lost, the TV
Woohoo!
show.
Woo!
Jen and I have been fans. I think we've all been fans since, years, right? Matt, did you watch it live?
Yeah,
on TV?
I watched
Okay.
it during its original run.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't. I watched it, season 6 when I caught up, so...
Ooh.
Yeah.
But since then, I've been a huge fan of it. Jen and I, we both had a box set, and so we still have 2 in our apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Lost Encyclopedia. We have a Lost poster. It's,
Yeah. It's brought us together.
Yeah?
I could say. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we talked about it at length at our first date.
Yeah, definitely.
It brought you together.
It did. But for those who may not know, the show Lost was on the air from 2004 to 2010 for 6 seasons, and the synopsis says, the survivors of a plane crash are forced to work together in order to survive on a seemingly deserted tropical island.
That is
It's a very, very, very broad synopsis of the show.
I'm sure that's how they pitched it season 1.
Yeah. But it's...
But at
Yeah.
the same time, you had 2 sentences how to do it. So the survivors of a plane crash are forced to work together in order to survive on a seemingly deserted tropical island, which is not because there's polar bears? Question mark.
people who don't age with beautiful eyelashes.
Yeah.
Mm.
I know.
yes.
Yeah, there's a lot to
Yes.
talk about with the show, and I think we can get to all of it, but we're going to focus on The Constant, the episode The Constant. But if you haven't seen the show, we're going to spoil pretty much everything. We're going to not be afraid to spoil stuff, so FYI.
Yeah. This is an episode for lost heads or people who've seen the show.
Definitely.
or you don't care about spoilers.
Yeah, true. There's always those people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We salute you.
So, we've all seen this show all the way through. I've seen it more than once, most episodes. I don't think I've seen every single episode more than once, but most episodes I have seen more than once.
When I watched it the first time, I powered through the whole show pretty much
Yeah.
to catch up near the end, but I didn't catch up in time for the final episode. But it was a really intense viewing. I remember a lot of stuff. I thought about the show a lot. I tried to understand everything because it felt like it warranted that, and I think it does. I think it's rewarding.
Yeah.
Because whenever I try to think why does that make sense, I'm like, oh, there's a reason for it, or there's some reason why things happen, which I like about these kinds of shows.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool show that makes you question things in the sense of how we like to analyze movies and now TV shows of well, why did this happen? What does that mean? And this show really brings up a lot of those questions, which is one thing that I really love about it. So
Yeah,
It is
there's a lot of moments where how does that make sense? And then
Yeah.
they answer it, and it's
Yeah.
oh, okay.
not everything
Not
is
everything,
answered, but
A lot of the big cliffhangers are usually answered.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes even some of the questions are answered. The answers are surprisingly simple.
mhm.
And for instance, the polar bear is literally just there was an installation where they were trying to have a zoo basically, and they had polar bears, which is still stupid. Let me just say.
Well, it's not actually a zoo. Jen and I actually watched the epilogue, which explains more why they have polar bears. Because polar bears have resistance, and they adapt to the scenario more, so they wanted to use them for the electromagnetic testing. So they weren't. It wasn't for zoo. It was just testing them.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Which is almost worse, actually.
So it makes it worse.
But, yeah.
But whatever. I will say this is just for all the people who are last fans or maybe more in my camp. Seasons 1 and 2, my family was really big on this show. We watched it together. It was one of those shows that everyone would get together and watch it, whether it was live or a DVR. My dad started to give up on the show at the end of season 1 because he just thought they were starting to force a reason for them to stay on the island, and he was done. My mom and my brother and I stuck with it for a little bit longer. My mom gave up probably around the show around season 3.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother and I stuck it out to the end, but I really did start to give up on the show in season 5. I didn't really enjoy the final season. I actually hate the final episode. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that. But that being said, now that years have kind of passed on it, and like I've had some more distance from the show,
Mm-hmm.
like I definitely appreciate, particularly the first half of the show, a lot more than I did when I was there. Oh, my sister's a big fan and owns the box series of
Mhm.
Lost. So you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
I was always on board. I don't think I ever lost interest in it. I don't understand. I mean, I think the popular opinion is that the finale is bad, but I don't agree with that. I think people that don't like it, like, I don't know. I think there's, if you
can say it, Matt.
like,
You
like
can say
I'm
it.
not saying you don't understand everything, but like how else are you going to end the show about all these characters without a way to bring them all together again?
Right,
You
right.
know?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I wasn't like in love with this ending. Like there's certain shows that have great series finales. Psych has a great series finale, and Lost just kind of didn't. How I Met Your Mother definitely didn't, but I wouldn't
Right.
say that Lost was worse than that.
No,
for
I mean
sure.
Lost is not. I don't consider Lost a bad ending.
I think people just had unreasonable expectations. I think
Yeah,
when it's not. I think it is partly the show's fault because they set up this alternate timeline that people expected to be an alternate timeline, but it's really just obviously where it's the afterlife that the people created to all come back to at the end,
Mhm.
Right.
which I think is what people were disappointed with. But at the same time, it's like,
It's not
what did you
magic.
expect?
It's not. I knowing the ending and then watching it a little bit more now and in the past few years after like kind of letting it sit for a little while, I like the idea of like they're all kind of in purgatory kind of and they're being punished for different things or whatever, and
they had to
I
find
don't,
each other again.
yeah, that it's kind of bringing the idea that yes, everyone is flawed. Even like all these people who we think all these people can't be flawed, but
Right.
they are
Right.
in all very different ways, but that they can still be, maybe redeemed isn't the right word, but somewhat redeemed and like, find each other and become better people through their connections and their relationships with each other and, learning from it. And I think that's maybe not necessarily the whole point of why they wanted to tell the show, but I think that's a cool
Yeah.
lesson that comes from it. And I don't think that's something that's like, should be spit upon from, the obnoxious computer geeks online who
Yeah.
sit behind their keyboards.
No, I don't
You
think it's
know.
an ending that's to be spit upon. I mean, it's tough because it's the same problem that almost all TV shows like this run into with the funnel. You eventually have to
Mhm.
funnel into one singular ending.
Yeah.
And you can either take one approach where you leave a lot open-ended, which does work. I don't know if it would work for a show like Lost because it was a show that was kind of built on this satisfaction of seeing the end. So they went the other way and went a complete definitive ending, which was for the best.
Mhm.
I will say the final shot of the last episode is beautiful. Like the
Yeah.
last few minutes, how
Yeah,
they
his
decide
eye.
to tie that all in.
Mhm.
There's some great moments. I guess for me, where I kind of lost the show a little bit is when they gave the origin of like the smoke monster and like the island spirit. I think for
Jacob,
me,
yeah.
I think for me that just went into just too much of just a weird metaphysical territory, even for this show.
Mhm.
And plus, kind of didn't like Jacob. I kind of felt bad for the smoke monster, and that kind of tainted how I viewed everything else.
It almost felt too, because we had invested so much time, it almost felt too maybe juvenile almost, of like that's the core of this, is that it's
Yeah, Cain and
two
Abel on
brothers
the island.
fighting. Yeah.
Jacob versus
And
the
it's-
smoke monster.
Yeah, it's Cain and Abel, and it just feels kind of like a cop-out at that
Yeah.
point, because it's been so many complicated puzzle pieces and things overlapping, and it's interesting, and it's good storytelling sometimes, and then it's this, and I agree with you.
Less is more in that
Yeah,
situation.
it would have been cool to kind of get pieces to understand enough so we're not like super frustrated, but we don't need to see all these flashbacks of their relationships when they were people and all this stuff and their mom, and that I agree. That was kind of like, I don't care about this.
Yeah, that was a
I
weird...
didn't sit for 5 years to watch you live in a foot. You know, like, I don't... show me enough that I can understand. I don't need to see everything that you do.
Right.
And, you know, tell the story you want to tell that way. We don't have to... It's almost like, oh, you guys need answers. Here are the answers that we're going to give you. And it's not the answers anyone wanted.
Yeah, I think the show really thrived when it gave you mysteries. For me, one of the best episodes is one of the episodes we're going to talk about, The Constant.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best episodes of the show. One of my favorite also episodes of the show, however, is when we first get introduced to Desmond in the first episode of season 2.
Yeah.
What a great
Hatch
episode
when he's... Yeah.
There's so much going on.
That beginning shot of the opening of that episode, when it's like he's in the hatch.
Right.
We don't know it's a hatch. It looks like just like a regular house or something. And he's like, he rides the bicycle and he does his thing and whatever.
Right.
And you're like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know what he's doing, whatever. And it like pans all the way up and it goes out and then you see that he's like on the island.
Right.
And it's like, holy crap, there's this whole other world we don't know about.
Right.
That was
cool.
great. Yeah. But, you know, they can't all be moments like that.
No, it can't all. Obviously, no show's perfect, and
Yeah.
I'm not hating on Lost. Obviously, I like the show,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just kind of surprising that Desmond seems to have some of the best episodes of the show are Desmond centered.
Well, he's special.
He's special,
The rules
yeah.
don't apply to him, so
True.
Yeah, he's definitely, which we could talk about that now. I wanted to ask who you guys' favorite and least favorite characters were. My favorite is definitely Desmond.
Yeah.
Close runners-up would definitely be Ben and John Locke.
yeah.
And I like Daniel Faraday sometimes. But, yeah, so we'll do favorite first, so...
Yeah, Jen, I agree. I think we both agreed on our first date that Desmond is like our favorites. My runner-up would be Hugo, just because he's funny and he's great, and like you just love him because all he wants to do is help people and just to be back on the island.
I think if Walt ended up staying through the whole show, he would probably be one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
We just didn't get enough of him, and I thought he was so interesting with his ability and what he could do, and I wanted to learn more about that, and then he was kind of taken away, so... What about you? Your favorite?
Favorite character? You know, I actually really always liked... I liked all the characters, but I really liked Jen. I thought Jen was such a cool character.
Yeah, he's great.
He had such a great arc.
Mm-hmm.
I was so upset when they killed him off, because I felt like that was such a waste of...
But it was at the end of the show.
God, it was so heartbreaking.
It was such a heartbreaking thing.
That was a rough. That was rough.
But Jen, I just liked Jen's art because Jen like had like this. He kind of suffered in silence, kind of.
Yeah.
And he didn't really like.
I liked his punishment, quote unquote, and why he was being punished. I thought for him was kind of interesting. You're right. He was quiet about it, which was kind of cool.
Right, but he'd done these things that he knew was wrong, but he just was in a totally different situation. I also, obviously, I actually really liked Sawyer. I thought Sawyer was
he had a good arc, too.
He's just kind of an interesting character, and as was Elizabeth Mitchell's character. I'm forgetting her name.
Juliet.
I always liked her, and Desmond's awesome.
Yeah. My thing with Sawyer was that he was great, like, the first few seasons, and then he kind of got played out and just did the same shtick, and it felt like they didn't have any other interesting things to do with him.
Yeah, because he was, like, the antagonist, more or less.
Yeah, and, like,
until Ben showed up.
His whole, like, con artist thing kind of played out. Then it kind of... He didn't really have anything to do, and then he was in charge when they were in the 70s, and he had, like, a weird power trip that I was like, this isn't the Sawyer that I knew. The Sawyer I knew at the beginning of the show wouldn't give a shit about wanting to be in power. Stuff like that, I was kind of, like, over.
They do kind of massacre. His peak of a character is probably the episode with the Boston Red Sox where he decides to kill the guy. Yeah. That's probably the peak of his character, and then after that, they really never knew what to do with him.
Yeah.
But those first 2 seasons with Sawyer are great.
Yeah, he's great.
Benjamin Linus, side note, my sister met the actor, Michael Emerson, who plays Benjamin Linus.
He's great.
And she geeked out to him, and she said she thinks she kind of freaked him out, because he was like, oh, okay. And least favorite character, that is very hard. I mean,
the easy one is Nikki and Paulo, obviously.
Well, no, I don't want to do that cop-out, though. Like, from the main
Nikki
cast.
And Paulo, but Nikki and Paulo also don't they get one of the best episodes when they get killed by the spider? This is one of the best episodes.
That's a great episode, honestly.
They weren't killed by the spider, they were killed by being buried to death.
True.
are buried alive.
true. Very good point, distinction. But man, I can't hate him because of that episode. They gave me one of the
I know.
top 5 episodes of Lost.
That was
in
a
my
really
opinion.
great. That was such a Lost
Billy D.
episode too. It was like, because you finally, not finally, but you saw this story of these people, and they tried to like do some stupid stuff of like pretending like they were there the whole time and had dialogue and scenes
Right,
that we had already
yeah.
seen, and it was kind of dumb, and everyone was like, stop being an asshole. But anyway, by the end, it was such an interesting thing of like they were trying to find these diamonds, and they were really greedy people, and then
Right.
it was just like an honest mistake. They thought they were dead, and so they buried them, and they didn't waste any time, and then and then that's the end, and we never. Obviously they died.
Right,
And
it's like
just
it's like
kind
a
of-
Twilight Zone episode in the middle of Lost. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it's just like this really like moral fable happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
My-
you know what? Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. My least favorite, though, is definitely, like, far and away, Kate.
Mm.
Far and away. Most of the women on this show are pretty annoying. Juliet
Yeah.
is probably the only exception. Sun is okay sometimes, but she's too much of a passive female that tries to be a non-passive female, but is never written well enough that she can never really get away with it.
Right.
Like, when she's trying to kill Ben, you're kind of like, this is dumb. Like, come on, you get over yourself.
Yeah.
Like, this is bullshit. Most of the women on this show are very, like, I'm sorry, but honestly, they're poorly done.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because could have been an even more diverse cast than it was. Michelle Rodriguez, her character, she as an actress is great. Like, I love her.
Yeah, she was a
But
great-
her character was the worst.
Yeah.
Anna Lucia was the worst.
And then
Like,
she dies in such a
and-
Quick.
yeah.
wow, such a
And
like
you're just, and no one missed her. And like Libby
Yeah.
was okay, but she was also passive. Like, there is nothing interesting, and so
Yeah.
they try and put it all on Kate, but they don't ever actually put anything on her.
Right.
She just has
She always runs away.
she's so whiny and she's so moody, and it just feels like it's written by men, and I know it is. And I know that they can write for women because they're the writers for Once Upon a Time, which has a lot of really strong women. So I'm hoping that, like, between Lost and Once Upon a Time, somewhere along there, they did learn their lesson. But in this show, it's 98% male-centric, and they have all the interesting storylines. And I have to bring it up while we're doing this show, because it's not okay. And that's my biggest gripe with this show, is there aren't women that I can relate to. I can't relate to Kate. I don't have
Right.
this obnoxious power trip of trying to be the best girl, but the girl that is off on her own and she's independent and like, I want to be with Sawyer, no, I want to be with Jack, no, I want to be with whoever I want to be with, I don't want to be with anyone, blah,
Kate-
blah, blah,
Kate
blah,
is such-
Aaron's my child. It's, oh god, it drives me crazy. And don't even get me started on Claire, but like,
Yeah, I was gonna say Claire.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is that your worst
Yeah,
character?
well, I don't hate her, but everything they did for her was like, "Where's my baby? I have a squirrel baby. I don't care about my
I have
baby
a
anymore.
squirrel baby.
I'm
oh my
now
god, the
oblivious.
squirrel baby was
I'm
the best.
I'm now oblivious. I don't know it because, like, obviously
yeah.
the smoke monster kind of I guess kidnapped her, but like she just got the shit end of the stick most of the time, and like they didn't really.
You know
I don't
what-
know.
you know
Besides
what
the
I
baby,
think
that was it.
Would have been the coolest thing is if Jacob was actually a woman, not a man.
Well, that's Jacob is my least favorite character
Yeah.
because for me he symbolizes everything wrong with the show. Is Jacob? For me, is Jacob.
Yeah.
But I totally give you with Claire. I like the actress who plays Claire.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I did not like her character. She always just felt
Yeah.
like such the stereotypical blonde hair, blue eyed, like we have to protect her character trope.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I did not mind. I did not hate Kate as much as you. I can understand why people hate Kate. I totally get it. And there are some episodes I was like, Kate. Or sometimes I'd be like,
Yeah.
a Kate-centric episode.
Yeah, if it's a Kate flashback, I always dread that episode.
You're like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I will submit that Kate does fall into the typical, like, male fantasy character because she's a bad girl, but she's still sweet deep down, and she's elusive. But
She's
she,
very much Pretty Woman. She's a hooker with a heart of gold. so to
right,
speak.
like, but you can still tame her. Like,
Yeah.
it's all that kind of
she's
falls
still
in.
vulnerable, but she's a badass, but
I-
not really.
I
and-
can't fully hate Kate just because Evangeline Lilly does such a good job playing her. Like, Kate is a much more, despite how annoying she is, and despite how she's written, Kate is a much more compelling character than she has any right to be. Like, she really, like,
Which says something with how they write the show for women.
right. No, I
Honestly,
agree.
if I agree with what you're saying, and I think if there was another like strong woman like Juliet, but someone else on the show that was like there from day one, in addition to Kate, then it probably wouldn't be as bad. But Claire was not that. She was, as you said, she's the Daphne. She's damsel in distress and nothing else.
Hey, Daphne helps the team sometimes.
Okay, so then she's not even Daphne. But, and Juliet comes later, but she's so serious and reserved and never shows any emotion that she gets kind of feels like talking to a brick wall with her sometimes.
Right. I think Julia's one of my favorite characters because she was the antidote for Kate. She was a no-nonsense woman. When Kate and Juliet finally fight, I was like, yes. Yeah. But it just was, I'm with you. Now I'm thinking about it, even kind of more critically, it's like, the female characters really don't get strong storylines.
I mean, personally, I don't disagree with you guys on Kate, obviously, but like in the time, I had a huge crush on Kate because in this show, she's like Kate Beckinsale is in the Underworld movies where they just make her look like always attractive.
Oh,
like,
true.
Like Evangeline Lilly in the show looks like the hottest girl like you can imagine, just like the way they do her makeup or lighting or whatever. I don't know.
Right, and you're on an island, so any woman who's above a 6 is like incredible. You're like, hey, what's up? No, I mean, Evangeline Lilly obviously is very pretty, but like, I know what you mean. She is kind of like that girl.
I mean, obviously they always like put her in situations where she's like, wearing a tank top or whatever. Obviously, so you're like led to have those thoughts about her because again, the male fantasy.
Yeah, she very much feels to me like Jennifer Aniston on Friends.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
I feel like you're hurting Jennifer Aniston.
Well, honestly, I like Jennifer Aniston, so I'm not gonna like jump in that boat right now. But but like in terms of how Jennifer Aniston's character was on Friends, which is she's the romantic person who's kind of a ditz and doesn't really bring a lot of intelligence or insight into the show. Not that anyone really did. But
I didn't watch Friends, so...
But like in the sense of character development, it didn't really feel like there was that much going on other than eventually she had a successful career and still ended up with Ross, which was the same thing as the beginning. Anyway,
right.
We don't want to talk about Friends.
But I know what you're saying, but like Kate kind of ends up in the same
it.
place she begins.
Yeah, like I didn't... For a little bit I was like, oh, maybe this could be interesting exploring more of the whole from season 1 when she was the one in handcuffs and she was the one being arrested and whatever. Right. And then that kind of like after... middle of season 2 maybe, that kind of like got brushed aside and was never talked about ever again.
Yeah, she wasn't enough of a criminal anymore.
She should have been, which is why she should have been with Sawyer, in my opinion, rather than Jack, because her being with Jack to me is her like conforming into blandness.
This goes into male writer territory because the real Kate would be with a Sawyer. Yeah. But in a writer's fantasy, and which I totally get as a writer.
The male lead has to be with the female lead.
Like, and it's just how it goes. I mean, God bless J.K. Rowling for not putting Harry and Hermione together. Yeah. But that doesn't usually happen. Like, usually, it's such an it's such like a weird thing to happen because that usually doesn't happen in stories. So, I'm not I'm not hating. Look, for all the people who ship Jack and Kate, I'm not even hating on the relationship. No. Jack's a pretty flawed person too. They both deserve each other for different reasons. But you do feel the keystones kind of pushing together to make that happen.
Yeah. The only relationship that I really truly enjoy watching, I'm going to bring this full circle, is Desmond and Penny.
They do have a good relationship.
And I was thinking about that. Okay, I will say, because I'm such a weirdo, I have seen The Constant at least 15 times. And I say that like lightly, like at least, probably more. It's one of my favorite episodes of television ever. I've named things after it, literally. Like, I did a short film that I named after this episode. Like, it's literally called The Constant. And... I know this episode like the back of my hand more than anything else. And I love every single time I watch it. I love their relationship. I love how she's one female character that I feel like was actually decently done.
Yeah,
but she's not in the show a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like...
She's like, no, we're
not enough
we're
to
done.
redeem.
But then, like, she still wants to hear him out because she still cares about him, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
And
she feels very real, authentic.
Yeah, I love that about her, how she's like, you broke up with me, like, leave me alone. She
Right.
doesn't, like, and, like, we feel for Desmond because we have seen more of what he's going through, but I like seeing her side of it sometimes in situations like this. Like, you can't just break up with me and expect me to still want to talk to you. Like, that's
Right.
not okay. Leave.
Yeah.
And
Get out of my house.
And they do it without making her like, oh, she just doesn't understand. She's like such a bitch, quote unquote. Like they
Yeah.
never make her. They make her a fully fledged character without making
Mhm.
her a bitch or a tramp or
Yeah.
like an over the top badass. She
I know.
manages to just be a normal person.
Yeah.
And also because in The Constant, we've the episode before The Constant with Desmond where he pulls the failsafe, we learn more about like the relationship, kind of why they broke up and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And so
mhm.
we know why she is the way she is, and
Yeah, Matt and I also watched
Flashes
the episode
before
Flashes Before Your Eyes.
Are we talking about this episode on that one?
No, not
Oh, okay.
not thoroughly.
'Cause
Just
it
kind
is a
of.
good episode.
It's a good episode.
It's important to talk about Desmond, so we're
when
going to bring it up.
when we're talking about The Constant, just because it's kind of like adds to that story a little bit.
I mean, it's the
of
prequel to the
Desmond's-
episode, more or less.
Yeah, it's Desmond's backstory, and we see more of kind of what happened, but it also ties in with Eloise, which is one thing I like.
Right.
About it. But anyway, we're not
And why Desmond experiences The Constant, because he was exposed to the failsafe.
right. But we're here to talk about The Constant. So with that in mind, we found the promo for this episode, which is season 4, episode 5. I do recommend looking this up on YouTube because it's pretty funny. So we will play it now.
Next Thursday, the worst thing that could happen to these stranded survivors
Maybe we should just tell him. Tell us what?
is a rescue.
They took off a day ago. Why haven't we heard from them?
Why are you flying directly into the thunderhead? I can't hold them below. Let go of me! What the bloody hell is going on? Answer! Am I gonna die?
An all-new Lost. Next Thursday at 9/8 Central, following a new enhanced episode of Lost on ABC.
I forgot about that. The enhanced episodes of Lost, where you'd watch the episode. It's almost like Talking Dead, where you'd watch the
yeah.
episode and then they'd have like little like title cards on the bottom, like saying like, "This is a clue."
I love this promo. It's so absurd and
Yeah.
over the top. Like, I mean, and that was the vibe of how they promoted the show, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
that's how they
like,
did it.
But like, as someone who works in promos, like, that is not how I would promote this show. It's not like a action drama. I mean, it's a drama. Sometimes there's action, but there's so many loud drum beats and noises and, you know, hard
Like
hats and whatever.
collar grabbing.
Yeah.
Like, that's all the collar grabbing there was in the episode.
And
wasn't
like
it?
yelling. There's a lot of yelling.
And tell me.
But like anyway, it's a fun episode.
Yeah.
It's definitely the top rated episode on IMDb.
And
So
didn't the creator say this was their favorite episode?
yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah, I
I
feel
might
like
have
they
heard
did.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, with Desmond, Desmond's our introduction into the whole time travel side of the show, really.
Yeah.
It started with...
Oh yeah, we're here to talk about time travel.
Yes.
Right?
What?
It started...
People are so
We
confused
literally
right now. I
haven't
thought
even
this was
talked
a
about
time travel show.
yet. I'm
Someone's on the
sorry.
405 right now like, oh, finally, they're getting to the time travel.
Sorry.
This is what I paid money to listen to. Our
To be
podcast
fair-
is free.
To be fair, at the end of the previous episode, we did tell people that we all really love Lost, so
Yeah.
You were warned.
you've been warned.
We have a lot of people who are right now texting angry comments. How dare you talk about Kate that way?
Come at me, bro. Come
Evangeline Lilly was a missionary.
at me. A missionary.
She was. Canadian
So-
missionary.
Tell us more about time travel.
So Desmond really is kind of the start of everything that happened with time travel, because the first thing we see of time travel really is when he uses the failsafe in the Swan to stop the anomaly that caused the plane to crash and all that stuff. And that exposed him to a lot of radiation, which either triggered his electromagnetic power or whatever, or it like exposed it to him, where he jumped back into his body in 1986 when he experienced breaking up with Penny and almost going to buy the ring, and then Eloise told him other stuff, which we can get into Eloise later on, but
Yeah.
that was the start of it all. And then when he left the island to go to the freighter, that's it triggered this like time anomaly in his head to connect to 1996 again, back and forth.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see the jump back and forth, because we've been watching the show with flashbacks, but it's not, when we flashback and we see, like, oh, how Jack's relationship was with his father. When we go back to present day of Jack on the Island, he's not, like, referencing him and his father. Usually it has something to do with the episode somehow.
Right.
Like a lesson they
Like thematically.
learned or something, yeah. But in this circumstance, it's kind of cool. It's like
He's actually there.
he's reacting to things he saw as he's jumping in the past, and, like, with Daniel Faraday, and then going to find him and all this kind of stuff. So, so that's it, which makes this episode stand out for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, the show does more time travel, but in general, the general rules of time travel on the show is you can't change the past. The future can't be changed unless you're Desmond. Desmond is different. The rules don't apply to him.
Yeah.
So when the rest of the crew goes back to the 70s, they always were there in the 70s.
Yeah.
Whereas Desmond, like, when he does time stuff, or when people do time stuff to him, they can change things. And the Constant obviously is one of them, where he visits Faraday, and he tells Faraday, this is why I know you from the future, and he tells Penny he'll call him in the boat in 10 years or whatever, and he does. Like that, I think that was a change that happened, Yeah.
Faraday!
But,
Faraday!
Yeah, so Faraday...
Golf!
Faraday,
Golf.
Faraday.
Oh.
so Faraday understands kind of more what's going on. He's been studying the stuff. He's messed with someone's brain before.
Yeah.
He knows kind of what's happening and how to fix it by Desmond finding the constant, which is Penny. Because if he were to find something in the past and the present that is consistent, it can, like, anchor his brain and stop it from, jumping back and forth in time.
And cause him to have an aneurysm.
Right.
Which is kind of talked about, the same concept is used in another film we talked about, X and Days of Future Past, in a similar way. Not quite, but the idea that if you keep going back and forth, if your consciousness keeps sitting back and forth to the present, like, eventually your brain would just snap.
Yeah. And the difference is that in X-Men, he doesn't go back and forth.
Right.
He just goes back and then stays there. Whereas in this, he goes back and forth, not by choice. It's just something that's happening to him through some sort of this time anomaly power.
I know, but yeah, I mean, in general, time stuff, a lot of the stuff on the island is, like, electromagnetically based. All of the anomalies, the stuff in the Swan, with the frozen donkey wheel, all this stuff is, like, electromagnetically based, and to go beyond the Constant episode, when the people are traveling across time, they're jumping through time.
So yeah, in season
same thing happens to their brain. They can have an aneurysm.
In season 5, the end of season 4, Ben turns the wheel. To move the island so that Charles Widmore and his people cannot find it. And in doing that, it dislodged them in time, is what they say on the show. So the people, whoever was on the island when it moved, essentially, are fluxing through time as, in different increments. Sometimes it's 5 seconds, sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's a year, whatever. So then that's what you were saying, is that because they're also traveling through time and experiencing this, all this back and forth, sometimes in the past, sometimes they're in the future, their brain overloads.
I mean, it's
basically.
Yeah, it eventually can kill you by the same way. It gives you a brain aneurysm. Yeah. As we see happens to Charlotte, she dies from all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I mean, as a result, the people are stuck in the 70s. But that kind of stuff is different than Desmond, because he's been exposed to all this radiation, and he's things have changed. Things when they're flashing around in the past, Faraday knocks on the door and tells Desmond, like, find my mom Eloise Hawking, like, she's in LA or Oxford or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then in the present day, Desmond wakes up with that memory. It's a funny moment because, like, she's like, "Oh, it was a dream." It's like, no, it wasn't a dream. It was a memory. Yeah. And it happened right then and there. So that's like, it wasn't like he forgot it. It was like it wasn't there until Faraday did it in the past.
But for Desmond, it's like when he was on the island in, say, whatever year it was, 1999. Okay, Faraday knocks on his door. He's in his hazmat suit. He's like still in the hatch, pushing the button. Faraday gives him his message, and then Faraday disappears because the island moves again.
Right.
Okay. Desmond wakes up 15 years later, or however long it is, and 14, 12, whatever.
It's a new memory for
and
him.
it's for him, it technically that happened to him decades before, but he doesn't remember until like way later when he's already off the island, has been off the island for 3 years, and then wakes up and has this memory dream.
Yeah, but see that's why I think for him it was a change in the past. It wasn't like it happened to him at the moment when he was there. I think Faraday did it in the past, and then Desmond in the present quote unquote, I guess 2004, 2007, had the new, like, since things were changed, he's like, oh, I remember that happening now because it was then changed,
because it's a new memory.
Yeah, like the past was changed by Faraday because he knew that Desmond is special.
Yeah, which was cool.
He's special.
He is special.
He's a special boy.
Yeah. And it's a cool thing, too, because I really like Desmond and Daniel's relationship and how they kind of cross paths every once in a while. I think it's kind of cool. And how Desmond crosses paths with Eloise, who is Daniel's mother. And she's also special and can see things.
She knows how things are supposed to happen, or she has knowledge of the future, and it's not really explained in the show.
It's a general term. You would call her psychic, but I wouldn't necessarily say that. She kind of has the knowledge she needs. We kind of have speculated that, and it's a fan theory, I think, that Jacob gave her this ability to help facilitate things when he could not be there.
Off the island, because we know that Jacob has knowledge of the future, I guess, more or less, because he knew who to visit, he knew who to bring to the island,
right?
So we know that he has extra time knowledge, I guess, more than he should.
I mean, it makes sense because the island has this time energy, and Jacob has given
connected
this
to the island,
eternal life to Richard. And so it kind of
we know he can
makes
gift
sense
powers.
that he gifted a power to her too.
Right.
That's our fan theory. It's not
but I mean, but there is evidence. The evidence
you can get lost in lost fan theory.
Well, but no, but that thing is, there's evidence in the show because after she gets everyone back to the island, she visits Penny. And Penny asks if Desmond's okay, and she's like, "I don't know what's going to happen for the first time in a long time. I don't know." And that's around the same time where Jacob dies, which is where the end of Jacob's knowledge ends too.
Right.
Because all Jacob knows is...
Is that when Richard can die too? Is that that, right?
But Jacob kind of knows enough to get everyone to the island, and he knows that the smoke monster will kill him eventually using the loophole. So, I think Eloise's knowledge is tied to that. So when Desmond visits her in the ring shop, she knows at that point what Desmond is going to do. And when she sees that he's doing something differently, she's like, no, you're supposed to go to the island. This is what's going to happen.
And he's talking about Ring Shop. That's not from the concept.
That's right,
that
it's
is
the episode before.
That's from, it's not, episode...
Earlier,
not episode before.
I know, earlier. The one we're talking about before.
It's from Flashes Before Your Eyes,
Flashes Before Your Eyes, by the way, has the sickest burn in all of Lost.
What is it?
When Desmond goes to Penny's father, and he pours him a drink. He's like, I want to ask your daughter to marry me, and he pours him a drink. And he said, this is my finest scotch. I'm not even willing to share scotch with you. What makes you think that you can marry my daughter?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cold.
It's rough. Charles Woodmore is he's a cold jerk.
That's so evil. That is so messed up, dude.
This sip is worth more than you can make in a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I still remember that even before I watched that episode. When that scene came up in this episode, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the episode from that line I remember.
I will say, fun fact, so as I mentioned earlier, this writers and show creators of Once Upon a Time are the same guys who wrote for a lot of these Lost episodes, and they have that Scotch brand often shows up. It's a Lost specific name. McCutcheon often shows up also on Once Upon a Time. There's a lot of little bits, especially the beginning of Once Upon a Time. If you're into that type of show, it's kind of fun. The first season especially, there's a lot of little bits. There's like someone's house number is like 815, and
Nice.
there's like
Very nice.
108 minutes and stuff like that. So anyway, that's kind of a fun fact. But
Not to do, sorry, I didn't have to do it. I
no,
like that
it's
episode.
yeah, I like that episode too.
And it's-
Yeah.
I guess on the note of kind of more of the time stuff, time does correct itself. There's like a higher power, even higher than Jacob, I guess, more or less, where it's like, when it's back to the episode Flashes Before Your Eyes, when she like says that man's gonna die, when Desmond's trying to save Charlie, it's like no matter what you do, like time will correct itself. And so that's why Desmond's like, no matter what I try to do, you're gonna die, Charlie.
Yeah.
Because like time. The way that time works in this is it's like it's a current or river. I forget how they describe it, but it's like you can change certain things, but it's going to correct itself.
Yeah, which is interesting if you think about someone like John Locke, who the island heals more than anyone else.
Right.
I'd say physically and I think emotionally. I think it's interesting that it wants to keep him. And that's not necessarily like a time thing, but like there were definitely instances where
it's
he
fate, too.
would have died. Yeah,
Right.
it's fate, but
Which is like, I guess, destiny, which can also be like tied to your timeline, more or less.
Yeah, but I want to talk more about the Constant specifically and how that time travel is used of Desmond jumping back and forth. So it's kind of cool. At first, when he jumps, time almost, I put it in quotes in my notes, that time pauses until he comes back. So if he's on the freighter and then his conscious goes back to when he's in the army training camp, okay? And when he's in the army training camp, he calls Penny on the
It's
phone.
like for a while sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's for a while. He calls Penny on the phone in the phone booth, right?
Yes.
And then she hangs up, and then he flashes back to the freighter. Only like a moment has passed
Right.
on the freighter, no matter how long he was in the past. That's only at first,
Right,
though.
but
It changes.
He gets stretched out more
So-
as he gets closer to dying.
Yeah, and it says when he meets with Daniel that
It's harder to.
it's hard. It gets harder. Each jump, it gets harder and harder for him to get back, and so more time kind of passes
Right.
between him, going back and forth.
Yeah, because he takes the whole train ride within one
Mhm.
episode of him flashing back, whatever.
Oh, yeah. So I think that's kind of that's a cool kind of thing to also show in addition to telling us.
Right. It's like it's all relative, kind of.
And so the idea of this episode and this phenomenon is that Desmond needs something consistent that he is emotionally attached to in each time. So like in 1996, in addition to 2004, and the only thing that's kind of in both of those in his memory and in his experiences is Penny.
Right.
So that's the idea. She's his constant.
Right. And so the whole thing is trying to find a way for her to reach him in the present day.
Yeah. Which is that's the phone call that you were mentioning earlier of like, I'm not going to call you for 8 years. Like,
Right.
Please answer the phone. And like the first time you see
Don't
this,
change your number.
Don't change your number. We don't know if she's going to answer the phone. 8 years is a long time. We don't know how
She might be
how
out of
she'll
the house.
react to. She's mad at him when we see her in 96.
Right.
At 8 years later, like, she hasn't talked to him, so it's not like all of a sudden she's changed her mind. But I mean, she has. But
Yeah.
so
Clearly something's happened between
Yeah.
then and then.
But I mean, at this point, though, all we've seen of Penny is when Charlie talks to her in the Pearl or whatever. Not the Pearl, but where the station is where he dies, the
Yes,
water
not Penny's boat.
one.
is that not the Pearl?
Maybe it is the Pearl. I guess I'm thinking of like the Looking Glass. Maybe that's something else.
It is the Looking Glass.
Okay, well then, yeah. So that's when like we see that Penny is out there trying to reach Desmond. So that's like I guess kind of a hint that she's looking for him still. you know?
Which is cool. So I love this episode.
Yeah.
I love it a lot. I liked that the rat was also named Eloise.
Yes. Nice little
It was a nice
little foreshadow there.
yeah. Consequences of this are
Aneurysms.
severe. As we mentioned, aneurysms.
Radiation.
We see Fisher Stevens dies.
And
Minchowski or whatever.
Minchowski, Milokovich, whatever his name is.
Minkowski,
Yeah.
I think is his name. There's the quote, "You can't change the future," is said, I think, maybe by Dan.
Yeah. Faraday. That's kind of the way time works in this show. Obviously, with Desmond, it's different. But the general idea is you can't. That's like Faraday's thing. It's like we can't change anything.
Yeah.
with asterisks unless you're Desmond.
Yeah.
There's always an outlier.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking of a way to like general relativity and like Einstein and Newtonian laws of physics is like the general rules of the show with everyone else jumping around is like Newton's law. It like it'll get you through. It'll get you to the moon. It'll solve most of the stuff. But when you talk about like Mercury's orbit or like other things, you need Einstein relativity, which is like they're both not. Newton isn't wrong, but Einstein clarifies things, whereas Desmond is like that, where he's different, but he's still in the wheelhouse, but like he's just he further expands the rules of the show.
Yeah.
Than what are there.
He's Mercury retrograde as a person.
Well, I would say retrograde. That's just an illusion, I guess. But
Anyway.
I love that was a response.
well, retrograde is just because we're in orbit at different times.
Yeah.
So like we pass it, and it looks like it's going backwards. It's not actually going backwards.
Okay, I have a question related to this episode, not about planets. So the rat dies in 96, right? Desmond is out for 75 minutes, he says, and in that time the rat has died. Okay, my question is, did Dan ever actually show the rat the maze? If not, wouldn't that be...
He said it was an hour.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not going to show her until an hour from now.
Right.
I mean,
Right. 75 minutes, so that means 15 minutes after completing the maze, the rat died.
And so you probably expose this to more radiation, too, at that point.
Yeah.
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 So it's like compounded
I'm not-
radiation. Because you have the radiation from going forward and then radiation coming back, so it's double the radiation.
But it just seems... Yeah, I guess it doesn't necessarily take that long, but it didn't seem like he would immediately show the rat how to run the maze right after he finished running the maze.
Well, I'm pretty sure, like, in like the rat's mind, it's like it was its future mind jumping into it after it experienced the training, and then after it ran the maze, it went back to it. Like it was now its old mind, so it didn't experience it yet. So when Faraday teaches it, it's like, oh, here, go this way, like puts food down or whatever, and then he goes to the end, and then like that rat's mind at that point then gets sent back and has to do it again, but it's already done it once.
Yeah, and it would probably have to be right away in that sense because it is a rat. So,
Yeah.
Okay. My other question was, are Daniel's 1996 memories new?
I know, that's what I was thinking too.
Because this is the big question. There is this thing in this show that Daniel Faraday goes quote-unquote crazy. He's exposed himself to a lot of radiation. When Desmond goes in there, he's like, where's this vest? And then Desmond's like, what about your head?
And
he kind of gives him like a look like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
And then he kind of just goes back to his work, doesn't put anything on his head. So there's this, not idea, but there's this thing that Daniel kind of goes crazy and loses his mind, I guess. I don't know how to word it, but so it kind of can give you can let it slide that if it's kind of wouldn't be a time.
Well, he might have.
I know.
And this is well, it wouldn't be the same.
Like a plot.
But it might be similar to when people get what's called like chemo brain. It might when like you just like your memory gets really bad, you get really irritable.
Yeah.
Like, things get really like just kind of jumbled up.
And so like he's crazy until Daniel is crazy until he goes back to the island and the island heals him.
Right. I know.
But are the
thing-
memories new?
Right, and I think jumping on that question, the similar question is the note in his notebook, was it there before Desmond changed things?
Yeah, so at the end of the episode, it has Daniel's frantically looking through his old notes in his notebook and sees something that says, if anything goes wrong, Desmond Hume will be my constant.
Right. And obviously he wrote that a long time ago when he was writing the notebook, and so like the reveal, you can't tell if he's shocked or if he like remembers anything or what, but like the question is like, was that note in the notebook there at the moment Daniel got on the island? Like, has it always been there, or did it quote unquote get there after Desmond changed the past? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not really explained. And either way,
there's not really an answer. I guess if I had to pick one or the other, I would say that it's a new memory.
I agree.
And it came up as it happened, kind of like how
him knocking on the door.
Yeah.
I agree because just because it's Desmond. That's all.
Yeah, because I think it's moments and days that happened in the past, but he's modified them. Like he clearly was in the military barracks, and he clearly, but he probably
didn't have those same conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably before he got up on time.
Yeah.
They were ready for his routine, and that was it. But
Yeah.
this one, he messed up because he was freaked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the general consensus with the show is everything that happened. Like, there was in the 70s and whatnot. If you're Desmond, though, things have changed. So that's kind of where I like...
But I will
that's
say,
what
though, in the last season, they do flash sideways, which is an alternate timeline.
Yeah,
Well, it's an alternate reality that they created.
and might be more supernatural than scientific in that one.
I mean, that is because it's not really an alternate timeline. It's a reality where they created for them all to go back to. It's separate from time itself because people get there, even though they died at different points, they're all in this at the same time. So it's not really, I don't know, it's not connected to the current actual real world timeline. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It kind of like goes back to if the plane didn't crash. But I didn't rewatch that episode for this, so I don't remember why is Desmond on the plane.
well, because it's a different reality. It's a thing that they created, and at this point, it's not at all like it wasn't like it branched off from the past. So like Desmond wouldn't have to be anywhere.
Oh.
It was a whole new reality that came out of nowhere. It probably had nothing except right when it was created.
It was
when
created-
they're on the airplane.
And it was created after the hydrogen bomb, right?
No, I think no, because it's separate from the timelines of the show. You can't really connect it to a certain point because Shannon's there in the side flashes that she died before the hydrogen bomb. It's
No,
like,
but I mean, like, not that it's happened after that. Like, in the show telling a story, it happens after the hydrogen bomb explodes and then it
Right,
shows
yeah,
the
in that
flash
moment,
sideways.
right, yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Right.
Yeah. So scientific accuracy,
well, that's what's fun about the show is that it does a lot of science.
and uses science names,
Yeah, it uses a lot of
philosophy names.
right. It obviously accuracy to real science. It's sci-fi, it's pure sci-fi. But what I want to talk about more is like their use of electromagnetism and like the difference between I guess the crux of the show, which is Jack and Locke, which is like science versus faith. It's always this whole thing,
Yeah.
and it's both because it is tied to like electromagnetism and like kind of the exposure to the stuff and this weird sci-fi stuff, but it also is fate, it's destiny, it's all the stuff with Jacob and time being a current thing. So it's both. It's not just sci-fi; it's also destiny and fate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool, and it's I agree that is kind of a fun part of the show. That it touches on a lot of like biblical themes too, and there's pieces of different ideals and theories, and there's science and there's magic almost, and but it's human relationships at the core, and that's something I really like about this show.
Yeah,
the relationship between the characters, and as you say, the dynamic and what they represent.
Yeah.
Each character kind of represents a different philosophy or a different way to look at life, and how the clash makes the show very interesting. Obviously, like you said, the most popular one is Locke and Jack with science versus like faith.
Yeah, Man of Science, Man of Faith is a great episode.
yeah.
But there's there's even great stuff like you have the idea of Charlie and Mr. Echo. That's a great dynamic.
Yeah.
Their relationship, Hurley or Hugo, and his relationship, kind of with really everyone.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of the audience.
Yeah.
He becomes the new Jacob, so he's definitely important.
Yeah. Cool. So we kind of touched on the relevance of the time travel and how it's used in the show, for sure. And obviously it's relevant to this episode, which is why we chose it. But it is, as we mentioned kind of at the top, The Constant is a different example of time travel. There's different types of examples. There's the island moving through time in addition to Desmond's conscious moving back and forth.
Yeah, another notable moment is when they're trying to get back to the island and they're plucked off the airplane in the flash of light,
Yeah.
and they're sent back to the 70s that way, which is more magical than anything else because there's no mechanism to do that other than the island pulling them back to the past,
Because
where they need to be.
The plane still gets to the island, but in 2007.
Right.
And, our people, most of our people, not all of our people, but most of our people end up back in the 70s where the rest who
Sawyer
had
and
been traveling
Jim.
through time ended up.
Right.
So, yeah, it's kind of like there's just this big flash of light and they disappear and everyone else kind of goes down.
Which isn't connected to the flashes of light that happened with the people that were jumping through time. This is just like the island.
It's like a pocket of Eloise kind of explains it in season 5. I think the episode 316, when they meet with her, she kind of tells them how they'll get back to the island.
Right. That's another example of time travel where, it's not the island moving. I guess it is the island moves them around, but it's kind of more. It's a different way it happened, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. So closing sets. Everyone's really dirty most of the time.
Throw some sand on there.
Yeah. But they are kind of how we mentioned with someone like Kate. Like they are still pretty, comma dirty.
Yeah, like they're pretty and dirty.
Pretty and dirty.
Yeah, like the episode with the Flashes, like Juliet Elizabeth Mitchell looks like great, even though she's covered in dirt and stuff. She has like a tank top on. She still looks incredibly attractive.
I do like her no BS look that she gives people when they're like trying to give her some shit.
Yeah.
And she just kind of like stands there and looks at them.
Yeah.
And like I love.
She has a very cold
that.
look. I've always Elizabeth Mitchell's been good in everything she's done. Once Upon a Time, she's the best part of that season. Her and her cleavage are the best part about that season. And even though I don't watch Once Upon a Time, I've seen
Watch
clips.
that cleavage.
I've
Watch
seen,
just for the cleavage.
I've seen the
I
stills.
didn't even remember that she was on that show.
Yeah, she was on there. She was the she played the Ice Queen. That's not Elsa.
Oh.
And what I wish Elsa had, kind of like what Disney wanted Elsa to be, but they couldn't. So they're like, let's make Elizabeth Mitchell do it.
Right. Yeah.
Good choice, by the way, ABC.
Yeah. Cool. So, would you want to experience this time travel? Let's say, because there's different examples, but let's say Desmond's.
No.
In the Constant.
Aneurysm is like one of my daily fears.
even.
Like it's like Archer, where Archer's like aneurysm will just kill you. Like,
Yeah.
no.
It feels like 9 times out of 10 we say no for a lot of these because the consequences are not worth the time travel. But this also
gotta
kind
have
of goes
drama.
with the X-Men one, where it's like I would rather go physically somewhere in time, not my conscience going back to my own memories. Even though in this one he can change it, but
Yeah.
I'm passing.
I think I said yes to X-Men because I wanted to be Wolverine.
That's a good reason.
And because it works out, obviously he can heal. But with Desmond, I'm going to have to say no because the reason why he's doing it is because it's more of like an accident. He wasn't supposed to do it.
Yeah, it didn't happen to Saeed or Frank, who were also in the helicopter.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess, it really was just a consequence of him being exposed to radiation. So, I mean, just across the board, it's kind of an unideal situation.
He definitely gets punished, it feels like, more than most other characters on the show. He really goes through a lot of shit. And even at the end, doesn't he end up back on the island and, Charles Widmore tests him in that giant thing?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other notes?
I could talk about Lost all day.
I know, we definitely could.
I've hit all the important things. So
yeah. One of my other favorite episodes I do want to mention is the episode where Charlie dies, which is, I think it's this one, Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah.
And that one's really emotional. It's a well-told story. Greatest Hits is the one right before it with Charlie. That one's really good. That might be, I don't know. They're all kind of, that story kind of goes over a few episodes, I think. But those are really some highlights for me. Any other notes you had?
No, I like this brought back some nostalgia for me watching this like every week.
Yeah.
There's nothing really else to say. Well, you know what? I will say this because it's one of my favorite little tiny moments of Lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I forgot what episode it is. Was the episode where they're playing this great song, this little like song, and then you realize that it's Hurley's Walkman and the batteries die. And this is like the first season, and he's just like crap. And he's just like, then it's just like the sound of the waves because he has nothing else to listen to now. His last batteries died. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Great moment.
Do you guys have any other episodes that you love?
I can't recall any specifically.
Like most things from season 1 are great.
Yeah, all the Walt stuff.
Walt is good.
An episode worth checking out if you've not seen it. I forgot what it's called, but it's Mr. Echo's backstory, how he became a priest. Only episode of Lost to ever be nominated for an Emmy for writing, and this is a very good episode. It's kind of a standalone episode in a weird way, but it's totally worth watching.
Yeah, and it's cool too when in season 5 when it goes through the flashes in time and Locke sees the plane actually like crash.
Yeah, the Beechcraft
is pretty cool. So I'm trying to see what episode that one was.
This is it. The end.
The end.
Or wait, maybe that was the final episode.
That's
Yeah, that
definitely
is
the
it.
last one.
So they did get nominated for more than just one. They got nominated for the last episode.
Yeah. They were
Um,
nominated for a few.
It's like every
Oh,
year.
okay.
it's
Every
like
year.
they're-
Every
Yeah.
year they got nominated. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
My bad. We disregard that bit of trivia. But it's a very good episode. Very, very good episode.
23rd Psalm, that's what it is.
23. That's a good episode.
Yeah, that's a good one. Definitely some good ones. If you go to the IMDb page, there's like top rated episodes list on the right hand side. So if you want, like, hey, I want to rewatch some episodes of Lost,
Yeah.
those are some good ones.
Obviously, another moment that I love is the we have to go back, where you find out that
Yes.
that those flashbacks really are flash forwards, and they've been off the island for a
Yeah.
while.
Yes.
That was
what a
such
great
a-
review.
mindfuck.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. So final reviews. Hyde, why don't you start? Show rating.
Show rating overall, episode or show overall?
Show overall.
The show overall. Even though I know you guys heard me say some disparaging things about the show at the beginning, overall I still got to give it an 8 out of 10 because this show really pushed the boundaries and the limits of TV. And it was one of the best shows of that time. The early 2000s, Lost is one of those shows that left its mark on that era of television. And overall, despite its missteps, it's still a very strong product at the end of the day. It's just a great show. It's a really well-written show and really well acted. It's even like the set design, the action sequences, they really made it an appealing show. So 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I love this show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I do have to dock points for what I kind of mentioned earlier about how they showed women and how they wrote for women. Definitely makes it a less than perfect show, but it's still great. It's definitely worth watching if you like this genre. It's just a fun show you just get really invested in these characters and their lives and how they intersect and how they change each other and all these mysteries that they find on the island and it's really cool. So yeah, 9 out of 10.
I know. Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect show, but I like it. I love it. I like it a lot. And I love it. And I've thought about it a lot. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it. I have the encyclopedia, and I haven't read it in a long time.
Nice.
But back when I was like more into the show, I'd be reading it, just read through pages of it, just to kind of think more about it. So I had to give it a 10 out of 10 just because I loved it so much. And even just thinking about it, I always just enjoy trying to like piece it together and make sense of everything and try to understand it more and more. So yeah,
A rare 10.
Yeah.
I think the only 10 we've given is maybe Time Travel for maybe Interstellar and Predestination.
no, we've given
Time
10s.
Crimes for sure.
Yeah, no,
Definitely
we've
got
given
Time
10s
Crimes.
for sure, especially
Yes.
on like the movie itself, not so much time travel, but
Yeah, we've given 10, but still very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare.
I love the show.
Yeah. Time travel?
Time travel. Obviously there's not a lot of scientific accuracy in it, but time travel throughout the show, time travel is a very hard thing to pull off on the TV show. And Lost managed to do it. Sometimes it did rub me the wrong way, but in a general sense, particularly Desmond-centered episodes, in this episode in particular, time travel is really executed well. So I've got to give it, actually, maybe even slightly higher than the show itself, 8.5, just for pulling it off in a very effective way. Time travel 8.5.
Yeah, I agree. I like the time travel. I like how they have different ways to use it. Sometimes I felt like it was a little bit too jumbled sometimes. Like it wasn't always kind of like how we were just saying that a movie like Time Crimes was like 10 out of 10.
Crafted.
Time travel was really smart, well crafted, and not just because like that movie was more focused on time travel, but in this show there aren't like great giant plot holes with the time travel, but it feels a little messy to me sometimes. So 9 out of 10 for the time travel.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I like what they do with it. I always prefer solid rules, and they do have rules, but it's purposefully not so strict. And I like it that it isn't, because it makes it so diverse with like Desmond and then with the people jumping around, and it's consistent, but also things can change, which I do like about it. That makes it interesting, and it's fun to think about. So I agree with a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's perfect, but I do enjoy it, and I think they did it well enough that it doesn't bring up plot holes like you said. But it's just so interesting that I think, given the scale of the show, the fact that it's in there and that like they made it make sense, I think it's pretty commendable. So 9 out of 10.
Yeah. On Rotten Tomatoes, the show overall has an average score of 86%. So we were pretty spot on.
Very nice.
And 91% audience score. So that's pretty good. Okay, so our next episode is back to my choice, and I chose a movie for us, and we're gonna finally do Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah.
Yay!
Hot Tub Time Machine.
I definitely saw this movie once. I'm guessing probably when it first came out. Don't super remember a lot of it, so that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I know I've seen it, but I don't remember much. But the idea is a malfunctioning time machine at a ski resort takes a man back to 1986 with his 2 friends and nephew, where they must relive a fateful night and not change anything to make sure the nephew is born. So it's kind of Back to the Future-ish.
Yes.
Completely. So, but it's comedic.
Yeah, it's definitely silly. I saw this once a long time ago, probably on like DVD or something, or I don't know, on cable, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah.
I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah. We actually referenced this movie in our show description. Just fun fact. So, cool. So that'll be a fun episode to talk about. So social media, we are at Time Travel Trio on Twitter and on Instagram, so please feel free to follow us. We are the Time Travel Trio podcast on Facebook. We are on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, called the Time Travel Trio podcast, so please rate, subscribe, follow us on all of those, since you're listening on one of them already. And thanks for listening. Thanks for following us on Twitter. As of right now, we're almost at 1,000 followers on Twitter, which is really exciting. So, tell your friends and send us suggestions and stuff. We love to hear from you. So, thanks for listening. Personal, I am at Jen Marlis on Twitter and Instagram.
I'm at Foreman in Space.
And I'm at Robinson is Hyde.
And with that,
we are out of
time. Did you hear that? Time travel. How stupid does that guy think we are?